Well, we're here with Åsmund Martinsen. Åsmund, welcome to ThrowsTalk, and thanks for giving up your time for this little interview.
Yeah, so, you're welcome.
Åsmund is the coach in Norway, the javelin coach in Norway, but also, more importantly, the coach to Andreas Thorkildsen for many years, since he was age 17. So how did you first start working with Andreas? What was his background when you got to know him first?
Well, he was a really talented boy. I saw him the first time when he was 12. He had a really good run up, and he was throwing really smooth and nice. And when he was 16, he threw very far. So that was when the younger throwers like me, we noticed him, and so he was a big talent. And then his father, I asked the federation for some help coaching him. So and that's when the federation contacted me.
Okay. And he was originally coached by his father, and he had a background in all kinds of different sports, or?
Yeah, he was playing football like all the kids in Norway are, and also playing along with skateboarding and trampoline and everything, so he was really coordinated.
Okay. And that was the first thing you noticed, his coordination when he was a young athlete?
Yeah, that, and he had something special throwing. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw him throw, it was in a competition in Norway, and I thought that the throw was going to go 60 meters, and it went 70. So it was like something special with the throwing arm.
Yeah. And as a tall, rangy athlete with that kind of throwing arm, that's a pretty good starting point for a young javelin thrower.
Yeah, it is.
So when he was 17 and he came to you, what was your original idea of how to progress him? Because that transition from good talent into good international thrower is often very difficult. What was your approach to that?
Well, I wanted to make him the best athletic thrower ever. So and I looked at the training schedule. That was not so much, and then I knew that what I wanted him to do when he was 20. So I increased the training by a third of that gap every year. That's in the amount of training, not the quality, but the amount of training. So I always focused on the long-term development. So I wanted to get the amount up first, and then start doing more quality work later.
So you didn't increase the intensity, but just the volume of his loading, of his training?
Yeah, first the volume, and then the intensity later.
And what did that mean in terms of a typical week of training, and how you approach that to add more? Did you do more fitness training, conditioning? What was the?
It was kind of basic, traditional physical training. This was back in 1999, 2000. He was still living in Kristiansand. That is 320 kilometers south from me, and so I made the programs and made sure that he was running, jumping, lifting a little bit, throwing, doing all sorts of the basic thing that we normally did. And all the basic training, like the core and everything, that came later.
Right. So when you talk about making the most athletic thrower, I think it's really important for you to have that balance, right, between the different parts of physicality and strength and flexibility.
Yeah, I think it's the total package that needs to be good. It's of course, when you look at his test results now, when he got older, he's strong, he's fast, but he's got everything. And he's not just the strong one.
And everything in balance. So people used to talk about Jan Zelezny and say what made him so special, and it wasn't that there was one thing that he was really good at. He just didn't have any weak spots, right?
Yeah, that's the same idea I had. I was trying to make him not excellent in everything, but good all around.
So no weak spots, and therefore less risk of injury.
Yeah.
That's good. So when you took on a young 17-year-old, did you have people in mind? Did you think, oh, shall I mold him after this person? Or what was your philosophy in taking this 17-year-old talent in terms of his technique development?
Yeah. Well, I was very influenced by Steve Backley, Jan Zelezny, and the Finns, like Kimmo Kinnunen and all those. So I was in my head having something in between. I knew I wanted him to rotate a little bit more, and Jan, because everybody wanted to throw like him. He was throwing so far, but So we tried to do those changes, but I saw when we went along that it wasn't right for Andreas. We had a couple of years when he was 20, 21, that was not so good. And so we had to go back to what made him good, and that was the run-up speed into the block and then high arm and a good shoulder. So we just had to go back to the basic throwing also.
And so in his 17 to 20, you had that 3-year idea of building him up and making a well-rounded athlete.
Yeah.
So were you slowly trying to introduce technical changes, or did you just stick with what he did well as a basic to start with, as a 17-year-old talent?
No, from 17 to 19, I didn't have that much impact because he was living so far away, and we had like training weekends together. And but when he moved to Oslo when he was 19, that was when I started like working harder on the technical issues. But in the beginning also I wanted him to shift back a little bit because he was leaning forward and like only using the speed and the shoulder to throw. So I wanted some changes, but it wasn't so easy because I didn't see him enough.
Yeah. So he was always very fast, wasn't he? And you're saying that sometimes that speed would get ahead of himself or cause him to lean forward into the throw?
Yeah, I think, and that's what we see in a lot of the young throwers today also. The legs are not fast enough and not boundy enough. Right. So the upper body takes over and they're leaning into the throw. So and he did the same, but he was just blessed with a really good shoulder.
Yeah, yeah, and also what's interesting, when you said you tried to go a little more rotational following Jan's technique, but it didn't work out for him.
No, no, not at all. When he rotated back, it put more stress on his back, like the spine, and he had some issues with the lower back. So we had to like stay away from that. And then also when he rotated on the backside, he started rotating in the throw as well, going around his left and not producing the power we wanted going straight out.
Right. And so that linear approach became much more important for you? Is it a little more like Steve Backley?
Yeah, it was more, it's easier also. Throwing that way, it's easier to be consistent.
Right.
I think it's, and that was what we were looking for in the throwing. When he was 17, he made his goal. He wanted to be the javelin thrower who won the most medals. And to do that, you have to produce very good results every year for many years. So your technique needs to be healthy and repeatable.
Right. So that's also that's important, but to maintain that kind of consistency over that number of years, health is an incredibly important factor of that.
Yeah, health. I think if you look at somebody who's managed to do some sort of technique and they're not able to do it anymore, it's 99.9% is pain. So something is making you do it a little bit different. So stay away from injuries and just do it over and over and over again what you want to do. And so now when I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit philosophical, and I have like a saying I'm telling the young athletes that the goal of today's training session is to make tomorrow's training session as good as possible. And in that it lies like a progression, but it's also the health issue. That you have to be able to train tomorrow at the same level or even a little bit better. So don't do anything stupid.
And Andreas was special in terms of winning medals in, I think, 8 years in a row in major championships. That hasn't been done by anyone else before, I don't believe. And, you know, usually injuries appear sooner or later. And so that means that your preparation was very, very good.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that as a coach, making him throw far when we wanted him to throw far. Like the training schedule for the year was working out, and it also it makes him stronger as well, because he knew that he was well prepared going into the field, and then it's easier to be like you're self-confident and you just relax and you know what you're going to do, and you know that physically you're well prepared, mentally you're well prepared, technically. So everything is coming together, and And that's something that's important to have that trust.
Also, the other thing is that Andreas is known very much for a lot of gymnastic training that he's been doing.
Yeah.
Why did you go towards that gymnastic training, and how were you able to do that with him?
Well, that was not my background. It was in 2004, before the Olympics in Athens. He told me that he felt a little weak in the stomach, pelvis area, and he felt that when he was throwing, he lost some power. And then we went to a gymnastics coach in Norway, who was working in the Olympic Committee, and he helped us a lot. So I explained to him what I wanted to gain, and then he made a training program in the gymnastics hall. So,
and what was that initial request? What did you say? I need him better in what aspect? Core?
Core, primarily core, and then I showed him the technique, and then it's like you're making the C with your body, and you show you how to like flex and be strong, and so I showed him the technique and like tried to explain how important it was to be not only strong but also fast. So, and then he made a very good program for that.
And it's also important that you started at that stage. You said the first thing is the core, because there's also lots of shoulder exercises, other things. But that came later, right?
First you have to stabilize everything. You have to have control of all the muscles, and then you can let go and take the control back, and then you get dynamic instead of static. And so that's steps you have to go. And I think that's really important to understand, that when you look at the videos from Andreas doing gymnastics, he did it every week for many years to become what he has, what some of the videos are showing.
And the first few years were very simple. Bridges and these sort of things before he got into the more complex movements and the plank and the side plank and like all those exercises. And he also started swinging in the parallel bars, and then of course he could swing more and more up to a handstand, but that took many years. So and did you see the transfer into the throw quite quickly, or did it take some time? What was the results of those sort of exercises?
It came very fast. We had 2 weeks with 3 training sessions every week, and then he increased a lot with power. Like back jerk, he increased 20 kilograms in 2 weeks, just for being stronger in the core and being in control.
That's very important. So it wasn't that his legs got stronger.
No.
It was just he was able to translate that force from his legs more efficiently.
And also all the bounding, like hurdle jumps and everything. He became so much better. Because when every time he landed, he felt like instead of like a spring in the middle, losing all the energy.
And that first couple of weeks, it wasn't anything difficult or technical. It was just repetitive, simple exercises.
It was simple exercises mainly on the floor, not on the parallel bars and things like that. It was mainly core, stomach work, holding, maybe some. He was using the walking on the hands when I was holding the feet. And it's simple like that, really.
And that's what is very important for people to understand. They look at some of the films that are out there of Andreas, but that's the end of many years of doing this. The initial stuff that actually made the big difference was pretty simple things that anyone can and should be doing. You believe?
It's true.
Okay. And then also, you then developed more of the gymnastic stuff into the shoulders as well. That was also useful for you?
We went through a lot of the phases. I think we were among the first who started doing this kind of training. So we did with the Swiss ball, and then we used the gliders on the ground, and then we started using rubber bands, and then the sling that you put your legs in, or like all that kinds of stuff. So it evolved.
It was a progression. And over how many years to get proficient at that stuff? Was it because he continued to do it for many years? But at a certain point, he probably reached.
I think that the strength comes quite fast, But then that's the good thing about that kind of training. There's a motivation in it, that you can learn something new and you can do something new. So you make it a little harder and harder and harder.
Right.
And then, of course, you started doing the rings, the parallel bars. Then you can swing to a handstand. You can do that 2 times, 3 times. And then, so you just continue to push in that area to become better and better. And that itself makes the training week more fun.
Right.
And that's important.
And how did that translate also into the technical growth and also in the growth on the strength side of things as well?
Yeah.
Had a good carryover for that?
Yeah, of course. When you're strong in from the rings or the parallel bars, you get stronger in bench press, for instance, or you get more throwing power, but you also get a lot better control. Because when you're swinging in the parallel bars and you have to stop in a handstand, you have to be really good in controlling the muscles around the joint, and that makes it easier for you to know where your arm are when you're throwing.
For functional stability.
Yeah, you feel like now it's low, now it's higher. The perceptive of the joint is better to understanding the coordination.
And the other thing that I think is very important with Andreas and his development, that he got very strong, but he didn't get very big. He doesn't look over-muscled. He's 90 kilos at 193 or so. And so he never got really, really big and over-muscled. He kept his lean flexibility as well during all this time.
Yeah, and that's something I discussed with one of our earlier colleagues at the Olympic Committee, how to make him strong without making him big. And I always believe that it's a little bit lighter weights, fast.
Good.
That's better for power. It's better than like strength.
Right.
And so he never lifted that much repetitions to grow. It was more
hypertrophy.
No, more power in it, and trying to keep the weights down a little bit and making them go fast. But it's also one of the talents he has. Like the legs, he doesn't get very strong in the legs. He's very elastic, and the bounding very good. So for a javelin thrower, he's like bounding on his legs, but upper body is very strong, but not so explosive. But it makes it's easier for him to wait and have the pull of the javelin.
And of course, you worked on the flexibility at the same time as building that strength, because he has very good shoulder flexibility.
Yeah, he's a little bit special that way also. The pectoralis minor is quite long. So if he lies down on the bench, you will see the shoulders just fall down. So he's very upright here. But many people said that doing all the bench press will make him tight. But he was throwing 3 times a week, and he was so good in letting the arm just hang, so he got the stretch every time he threw. So he just kept the mobility. We never stretched the shoulder really hard.
And I think it's also important that you talked about this training for power. So you didn't really do super heavy loads, but his maximums were very, very good. So he's still 200 kilo bench press, but without the size.
And of course, if he wanted to, he could have done a lot more in bench press. That's just one of the talent he had. He's very strong there, but we didn't max out.
No. What were the key exercises that you used in the weight room?
When he was younger, it was snatch, pullovers, of course bench press, and then we kept it real simple. You push and you pull, you push and you pull, and then you do the pullovers. And after we started, and of course in the beginning we did a lot of other, like normal other stuff in the weight room. But when he started doing a lot of gymnastics, a lot of the upper body strength went away because we got all that in the gymnastics hall. So and then it became very simple. Then we went back to bench press, row, then up and down.
And you also didn't do a great deal of work for the leg strength, because you did a lot of jumping, bounding.
Yeah, we started out doing full squats, but as it turned out, now we know the the reason why his hip tightened up doing full squat. We didn't understand why, we just saw that it was happening. So we cut it out and we did half squats and lunges and step-ups instead, beside all the jumping. So, and going from full squat to half squat, his jumping ability just went up.
And a lot of the jumping, a lot of the plyometric stuff, I think you always did it bare feet on soft mat, so that added to the stability exercise?
Yeah, Andreas liked bare feet, but normally he would like to go on a hard surface because he was all into the response.
Right.
He didn't want any.
Reflex.
He wanted like the fast touch. So wasn't that good maybe for the shock absorber, but it's.
But it developed the tendons, it developed the elasticity, which was what you wanted. Yeah. So. And in terms of throwing as well, how often did you throw a week? Because volume is so important to control when you're a javelin thrower.
Yeah. When he was younger, we did a lot. Yeah. When the first year he stayed in Oslo, we did 3 times a week, maybe 300 throws each training with shots. But that's 300 one-arm throws with shot or javelin. And then, of course, all the medicine ball comes along the way. So it was a lot of throwing.
And I think that's important. You mentioned this to me before, that age 17 to 20 is the time that you can do that kind of loading.
Yeah, I think so, It's especially for boys.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different for girls, but for boys, it's the testosterone is coming and it's like a fuel tank extra.
So therefore, that's why you could increase this 30% a year on volume, because the young kid was able to take that on.
Yeah, and of course the last year he stopped doing school as well, so it was easier to get the rest he needed.
So in that 3 times a week throwing or those sessions, how much actual javelin throwing did you do? What was the rest that you needed to take on that? Was that hard on the body or?
No, for javelin it probably was around 30 each training session, I think. It's so much easier standing against the wall, hammering the balls, but you're building strength. But the important thing is, of course, the javelin, and it's a lot more stress on the body when you do the run-up and the block and everything. So we never did more than 30, I think.
That's good. And the injury at the end of his career was a hip injury. Was that coming from the block side or coming from the other side?
No, it's the block side. And that's I'm no expert in the medical part, but it was some sort of like injury he probably had all along. When we look back and we see the problems with the squat, there's probably a reason why. So there's he had a little extra bone on the femoris, and then he so it hit the pelvis and then destroyed some of the labrum, and also so it's it came from like wear and tear.
And he had surgery and wasn't really able to come back after that surgery.
No, the surgery was okay, I think, but there was he tried for 2 years to throw with the problems, and that wasn't so smart because the muscles around the hip got really tight, especially the gluteus medius on the outside, who's stabilizing everything, because he wasn't able to do the crossover right, and then he came forward, so all the pressure was going on the back side of the hip when he tried to plant. So he didn't plant up into the joint, it was just like going on the back side all the time. And so that made the muscles really tight. And that, of course, made it hard to come back, because they were, and but there's also some inside the joint that is worn down, so it's
Steve Backley also had issues and had to have his hip replaced at the end of his career. So there's a lot of wear and tear involved.
There's a lot of forces going into that, the joint. So.
And the other thing, I think, the longevity of Andreas' career is to be commended, and your ability to oversee that as a coach is really to be applauded as well. And But during that time, you were primarily still teaching, right? That was your job. You were a high school.
Yeah. I was a high school teacher from 2003. I had another office job first, and then it became too hard with only 5 weeks of vacation to do both. So in 2003, I stopped that job and I went over to teaching, because, of course, like my old teachers told me that the 3 good reasons of being a teacher is June, July, and August, and that's good for summer sports. So. So I started teaching in a high school, and I did that until after the Olympics in 2008.
Right. And then, having won 2 Olympics with Andreas, they then felt you were good enough to employ you as a coach full-time?
Yeah, then I was allowed to become a full-time.
It's not your reward.
Yeah, I asked them politely if because I was getting really, really tired.
Yeah.
I was doing all the school stuff during the day, and if I had some time off, I went to training and back and did some more lecturing, and then at home I had to make the programs and then plan the next day, and so I never had any rest.
Yes.
So it was good. So.
And the other thing I like to ask people, at the end of the career or a successful partnership in this case, if you look back and look at that 17-year-old Andreas Thorkildsen again when you first took him on, is there anything you'd do different over the following 15 years?
Well, it's hard because everything comes for a reason, but probably start earlier with the gymnastics. I think that's probably the one thing that we could have done, and of course try to shift everything, but I like the technical part, but it's hard because he needed to get older to understand and to see what it was like, and then we had the years where we tried the rotation and everything, but I was really happy we did, because when he turned 28 and you're starting to push and you want to do something extra, that's not going to work.
Right.
So you can just stick with you're already done all the research, so you know what's good for him.
Yeah, that's good. And then so you value the gymnastics perhaps above everything else. I mean, obviously he was a talent to start with, but a lot of the success was down to this gymnastics, you think?
Yeah, I think it kept him free of injuries. So and of course we have to. That's a major part of javelin, is to stay healthy.
Right, and I think there's a lot to be commended in that, and in terms of looking at younger talent and how to bring them on. That kind of protectionist attitude, saying, let's get fit and strong, and that the general training, the gymnastics type training, can be so valuable in that.
I think for technical events, the coach needs to be close on the athlete. Of course, it's easy for me to say when he was that good, so fast, that we got funding from the federation and it was possible for me to do that kind of work. But I think if you want really good results, then you have to do that.
But that's also, we look at these superstars, we look at the Andreas or the Jan Zelezny in javelin, we look at these other people, and young athletes perhaps try to take them on as a model, but they're unique. They're pretty special. As you said, you tried to throw like Jan, it didn't work.
No.
It works for Jan, doesn't necessarily work for Andreas, but the basics are always going to be there. The technical understanding, the biomechanics is what drove you on.
Yeah, I think you have I think that's was good for me as a coach. I had the theoretical physical background, so I understand the movements and I understand the energy and everything, and the angles and everything. So I always tell the younger throwers that they should go on YouTube and they should look at the 10 best throwers, maybe the 20 best throwers, and see what they're doing alike.
Yes.
That's
very important.
That's the important thing, and then you get the box of boundaries that you have to be inside.
Right.
And there will always be variations. How you withdraw the javelin, which rhythm you have. And I really learned a lot. I got a tape from I think it was the Olympics in 1932. Seeing them throw javelin. the way they're running, with their arm really low and everything. But when they did the impulse step, the arm came up, and they were throwing the same way. So it was so obvious at that time that there were many ways to roam, but they still are. It's just that we have seen so much javelin that we're almost in the same little box. But it's dangerous when you get a new athlete to say that, well, you have to do it that way, because it's.
So if you had another 17-year-old talent and were trying to map out the roadmap for someone, what would you do? What in that first couple of years? What would you concentrate on? How would you encourage others to follow?
Well, I don't know if it's faith or not, but I've started coaching again, and that's a girl, and she's 17, so she's also a huge talent. But it's I think the important thing now is to learn her how to train. And make her understand which feeling she's looking for when she's throwing. Staying relaxed, staying behind the block, like learning all those things, and then you build on that. So she needs to find her own personal style, but I maybe need to change a little bit, and then together we will find out what is right for her. So she's no Andreas. So. Even though she's throwing really far, but
with different challenges.
So
And in terms of developing the technique with someone like this, what are you going to look for? Is it still based on rhythm approach, based on trying to give some speed carry through? Or?
No, I worked with her for 3 months now, and we are running run-up drills 3 times a week.
Okay.
The rhythm and the flow of the run-up, that's the main thing. You need that before you can talk about the actual throw. Because if the impulse is bad, then you come into a position that is impossible. So you have to take it easy, and I think having experienced all the good things with Andreas, I'm in no hurry.
Great.
It's easier for me, I think, to say that, well, we have good time. You don't have to be good next year, or we can use 5 years building this.
And one of the advantages we talked about with Andreas also is that coming from a small nation like Norway, you don't have the same competition that there is perhaps now in Germany and Finland to qualify for championships. You knew he was always going to be at the major championships, and you could prepare properly for those.
It was kind of easy. Well, not easy, but the schedule for the year was always, we wanted to throw good at Bissell Games, because that's home crowd, and then at the major championships. And we knew that he would have taken the limit, and he didn't compete, like you said, with anybody else. So we just knew that he was going to the championships, and then you can peak, just do everything up against that.
And he could pick and choose his competitions to allow you to prepare for that as well.
Yeah, that's also, we could just, when the schedule came, we're going to do diamond leagues, and that was obvious that he could throw there. So
you didn't have the issue of the Finnish javelin throws or the American shot putters, that probably it's harder to make the team than it is to do well in the championship.
Yeah, that's true.
So, if you're now looking and giving some advice to young coaches out there and working with young athletes, what would be your key words of advice for them?
I think for the coaches is to be humble. You have to search the knowledge, and you have not to be afraid of using. Like in the club, you probably have somebody that's better in sprints than you are, so use them. In jumping, find a good gymnastics coach that can help you. I am terrible in the gymnastics hall, so I couldn't teach him anything. So if you wanted to do something, you have to bring in some help. I think that's one of the strong sides for me, that I always ask questions. And when you find somebody that are good in something, if you show them a little interest in what they are good at, they will show you. They will tell you everything you need to know, because everybody gets happy when somebody else has the same interests. So you shouldn't be afraid of asking.
It's also really important to ask those people rather than just watch on YouTube what people may be doing. I think a lot of people make assumptions looking at these videos. Whereas if you have the chance to ask the coach or the athlete?
I was really lucky as an athlete because I went to Finland, and in 1995 I was meeting up with 8 of the 10 best javelin throwers in the world that year, and I went over and asked, like Laukan and Tom Paxtis and Selesny, and I went over and I asked, I see that that's what you're doing. What are you thinking to make that happen? I was more curious about the background and what they were trying to accomplish. Because I know that the human body is not like a computer that you program and it does what you want. It's like maybe, and I know with Andreas also, he had some mistakes that I thought were mistakes, and people look at them and they overanalyze it and they think he's doing it for a purpose. No, I'm trying to get rid of that, and then they, like his the block foot, he turned it out a little bit with the ankle, and I heard some like theories about he's doing that because he wants to open the hip more, and I said no, that's not right. So you have to talk to the people and ask the questions.
Exactly. And we see it now with with Julius Jaego. Here's a guy that famously taught himself to throw the javelin on YouTube. But what made him now world champion that level was also the input of good knowledge from Pickering. Good talent.
Yeah, of course. It's really impressive for him to throw 80 meters without a coach. That shows you the talent, the raw talent.
Exactly.
But you have to become like a 90-meter thrower. You have to have somebody to shape you and polish you.
Well, I have to say, Åsmund, you did a great job of polishing the talent that was Andreas Thorkildsen, and you have to be commended on that. So thank you for spending some time with us and sharing your input, and I wish you luck in the future with your next talent.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks, man.
Yeah.